save me. All the ways you make me white as snow. Find me here where I am hurting, here where I am turning.
Well, hello again. Welcome to another Z Roundtable. I am Pastor Z, and this is
Pastor Z.
Well, Pastor Lennox Zamore from exciting Central Tampa Baptist Church.
And Pastor Zelvis Applin from South Hills Church.
And we have a guest for you today. Our guest is Nolan Hinson. Nolan Hinson. And we've known Nolan for a while to be a very unassuming person. You look at Nolan and he is very humble, very comraderic. However, Nolan is quite an accomplished person,
Yeah.
and we will get a chance in this broadcast to talk a little about some of his military accomplishments. So he is rightly Colonel Hinson, being a military colonel. So today we're just going to talk a little and have fun discussing issues that intersect with racial reconciliation. And Nolan, you're from Bartow,
Bartow, Florida, the
Florida.
Big B.
The Big B, you call it.
Yeah.
Right on. And we had an opportunity yesterday to just drive through Bartow, you know. And for those who are listening to us outside of the continental United States, where would Bartow be in relationship to Florida? In Florida, what
well,
cities?
Bartow is located in Polk County, which is Central Florida. It's in the center. From north to south and east to west, it's in the center.
How far from Tampa, Florida?
So we're probably about 44 miles from Tampa and then about 49 miles from Orlando.
Wow.
So it's, again, in the center.
Right in the center. And although it's very much like, close to Tampa, but we went there yesterday with Nolan and looked at his home and looked at how he grew up. But it's quite a different place.
Yeah, relatively speaking, is that when I grew up and initially left there in 1969 to join the military, and here it is in 2020, we probably may have had a 10% change in the city. It's very little change. The demographics is pretty much the same. The land. So when I was talking to the pastor and riding down the road, I could say, this is where the white community starts. This is where the black community starts. Here's the road that gives you the delineation. So if you're in a certain place and you say Highway 17, and people would know west of Highway 17 was the white community, and east of Highway 17 was the black community, and it's right across the street.
Wow.
So when you grew up, this was your community, and you could see, commercial structures across the street, but you couldn't go in them because why?
Well, and this was still during the time of segregation, of course, and that's the one story that I always took with me, no matter where I went, is that there was a tasty freeze across Highway 17, and we played ball right in the field across the street, but we knew that you couldn't go to the tasty freeze because there was a sign there, whites only, and you knew if you went over there, the police was against you, the lawyer was against you, the judge was against you. So, and of course, if you got put in jail, you were immediately going to be placed on a chain gang, and you're in a work condition, and you could end up with being charged and put in jail for 1 year, and end up spending 7 to 10.
Wow.
So you just stayed away from the two communities, just stayed away from one another.
Pretty much.
Wow.
Pretty much. Even down to sports. You had football. They had a stadium. We used the same stadium, but we used the stadium at different times. If they had a game in town, our game was out of town. If their game was out of town, we was in town. But there was never any mixture at any level.
Wow, incredible. Wow. You guys had like what would a community center look like?
The community centers are kind of really wasn't a community center because we had multiple centers. You had the Bartow Civic Center, which was we call the White Civic Center, and it was in the center of town, and that's where all of the Caucasians went to. And then on the east side of town, we had Carver Recreation Center, which was a small building, and that's where all the blacks went. And conversely, what happened is because we were probably the only city for blacks that had a swimming pool at the time, they bust people in from 45, 50 miles away just to come to the swimming pool.
So in the civic center for the white civic center, would there be a sign there also?
Absolutely, there was
Oh,
a
yeah.
sign that said whites only. If you went to a gas station, there was a fountain that said whites only, blacks only. So it was demarcated. There were signs everywhere, and but culturally, when you grow up like that, you just kind of tend to already know where the lines are, and you grow up with knowing where the lines are. Like you know that you could go to certain places in the daytime, but once it was dark, don't go. And I don't think necessarily that you were so much afraid. It's just that culturally you had lived that way so much, and everybody else lived that way. There really was no reason to go downtown Bartow at night.
Yeah.
Wow. So yesterday we looked at the swimming pool, the white only swimming pool, and you told me that the blacks swam where?
We had our own swimming pool, but primarily we swam in lakes around town. Because of course picnics and different stuff like that, and you got to the lakes and they had canoes, and really didn't think anything about it. But alligators, snakes, stuff like that, you really wasn't worried about it. When you heard about someone being bit by an alligator, it was, well, they got too close or they was too slow. So
Wow.
Incredible. So yesterday, if I were to go to like right now, if I went across that dividing highway, like today, and Zelvis and I just went and stood up on the lawn here and started talking, do you think that someone would approach us?
not typically, but there are still pockets in Bartow that are still very segregated. And if you went into those areas, because they know that there are no blacks, Hispanic, Mexican, or anyone else in that area, if you go into that area, they will automatically let you know there's no pandering, there's no
Loitering.
no lottery, no. They are very quick to tell you that because they know that nobody in that neighborhood is except them.
And so that is the fact that these things are cultural values, cultural milieus, cultural norms that are unwritten but expected and anticipated and assumed. Then when a guy starts running in a neighborhood where you don't see black people running, people can assume a lot of things. It's like he is like completely should not be here because it's not culturally that's the power of culture. That's the power of culture. And could it be that, when this African American was running in a neighborhood that he was assumed automatically to be an instigator, a troublemaker, or quote, a criminal. And these are some of the things, that we try to dialogue and highlight into this time. It was very interesting. But you grew up in a place where you grew up really hard. You guys worked.
Of course, and everybody worked. When you start talking about low economics, and I have to go back to my grandmother who had 13 children. By the time you could hold a bucket of fruit sack, you was out in the orange grove helping with the family because economically you couldn't survive unless the whole family was working and all working together. So picking oranges, grapefruit, going out in the pepper field, watermelon field, you grew up with that type of work. And so, of course, and I hate to make it sound all bad because the good side is that when you actually went somewhere else that you had to work, it was easy.
That's true. That's true.
When I got my first job inside a building with air conditioning, I was like, man, this is, and people were talking about how hard it was, and I'm going, what? This can't possibly be hard. So Not necessarily that hard work always means that it's negative, but the issue really was more so how much you got paid for the hard work. That was the problem.
Wow, wow, wow. So you grew up in Bartow, very country, in waking up 5 in the morning to go out to in the fields to pick products, and but you wind up being a colonel in the military. Now we know that institutional racism manifests itself most in regulatory environments. Environments like the police and military and paramilitary. How did you manage to negotiate back then when things were so just post segregation? How did you manage to negotiate your way in the military to become a colonel?
I always lived by one statement primarily, and that was the slave always knew more about the slave owner than the slave owner knew about the slave.
You gotta come back again. Come again. Come again. You gotta repeat that. You gotta repeat that. You gotta repeat that.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
The slave owner always knew more about the slave knew more about the slave owner than the slave owner knew about the slave. Wow. And so you found out how did people pattern, how do they talk, how do they use language to shift you in different directions. And so my first entry into the military, I had some very good friends. John McGee, who's a Caucasian, and Grilly, also Caucasian. Those were the first exposure I ever had in actually sitting down and talking and looking eye to eye with a white person when I was in the military. And you start learning how they speak, where their gestures are, what's important, what's not important. And because of it, it made me work just a little bit harder because although I considered them friends, I also was raised in a neighborhood to say unless I was at least 2 times better,
Yep.
I was not going to be recognized. So in the middle of the night, I read regulations, I read policies, and
Made sure you were 2 times better.
to make sure. So
And
that
to
was,
speak on that, Nolan, because I just got through having a lunch meeting where I told a friend of mine that is Caucasian, that's how black fathers raise their sons. Anything you do, you got to do it 2 times as good just to get recognition in the same way that our white counterpart would. And so when we talk about that, that's a mindset that has been framed
Right.
that you have to live with and quite naturally pass it down to your kids so that they could have the same opportunities. And so how did that shape you as you were?
well, and again, when you grow up with an expectation, and that's what I call it. When you grow up with an expectation and you live kind of your whole life based on that expectation, you don't necessarily see that the expectation is high or low. It's just an expectation.
It's
Just
just
an
an
expectation.
expectation. That's right.
So, yes, I was taught I had to be. If you're 1.5 times better, you're equal. 2 times you could be recognized. 2.5 is better. So and those were the measuring sticks, and even inside the my school, Union Academy, as an all-black school, we had 9 guys to come out of an all-black school that went to an all-black university to go into the NFL. But it was because we all knew that we had to work hard, and you had the class that was in front of you setting a pattern for you to go
Yeah.
out and work.
Yeah.
So and you did not want to be the class that dropped the ball.
Yeah.
If each year you had a championship, you did not want to be the team that went and graduated without a championship.
That's
So,
right. That's right.
So
It's a high standard of
it's a
living.
standard.
But it's
Yeah.
it's a burden that is necessary. That we all knew that you were setting a trend. My brothers, they were setting a pace. When they came to America, they were making a way for their little brothers. Everybody knew that.
That's right. That's right.
Everyone was setting a trend,
trend.
or somehow a pattern or a course. You never live to yourself. You live for somebody else. We are losing that. We are losing that. We are losing a lot of that. We will talk a little about it a little later in the broadcast.
Yeah.
But it blows me away when you say you grew up in Bartow, where there was white and black people all around you. But it was in the military for the first time you looked into the eyes of a white person. It's like, wow, it took that long. Two cultures just coexisted without any deliberate attempt to integrate with one another.
Absolutely. And Jose Pena, another guy. In fact, he lives in Texas now. Just retired as a coach, and we've been in contact ever since. I mean, known each other since what 1970. And so these are the people that also were kids. We were all kids, 17, 18, 19 years old, being thrust into the military, having to learn to trust each other and have never talked to each other. And so I think that was a kind of a melting pot because it forced you to be in a position that you had to trust the people around you and you had to kind of take race out of the equation.
Yeah.
But of course, life being what it is, I spent a long time in Germany where when you went into communities, they knew that, again, you were different.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember they called it OPSEC where when in the military you want to make sure that you live to a certain standard and you go into a country and you don't tell people different things about yourself and so I remember we went into Croatia and I ran into the Croatian kids and they said, "Where are you from in America?" And I said, "Well, why would you know that I'm an American?" He said, "There's no black peoples in Croatia." You know? So, okay. So I really can't tell them anything else,
Yeah.
you know? And so you learn that when I was in Germany, to have kids walk up to me and rub my skin.
Yeah.
Because the expectation was that it would come off. Now, some people would say, okay, well, that was racist. Well, it wasn't racist because they had chimney sweeps. And people that went up in the chimney, they cleaned and they got the soot on them and they were black. And so the kids saw different shades, but I don't think they necessarily saw that. Okay, wait a minute. If that's a different color, but it's not the color we used to seeing.
Correct.
And so they're rubbing to find that, not rubbing because they think that it's going to come off.
Yeah. Wow. 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 So what was your reaction to being in countries like that just had this, what in the world are you? I remember when I went to Mexico on mission trips many, many years ago, and I was in Mexico City and crowds kept drawing to me. And it scared me to death at first because I thought, oh man, I'm in real big trouble here. Like, this is the cartel and they're going to come get me.
Right.
And they would just come up to me and they would do the same thing. They would touch my skin. They would want to take pictures with me. They'd ask me to sign stuff. And I'm like, I'm just here on a mission trip. What are you talking about? So did you kind of experience any of that when you were there?
Well, I was never afraid of it. I was always more afraid in America than I was ever afraid in any other country.
Wow.
And throughout my career in the military, I went to 19 different countries.
Wow.
And in 19 countries, I never, if they again, historically, there were black units and they did some bad things during war. And if the neighborhood that they went through, those people remembered. So when they saw blacks, they had a particular reason for not liking blacks or being afraid of black. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't generic that every black that walked the earth was a bad person.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm from Bartow. The Grand Wizard, the Ku Klux Klan, it was in Lake Wales, 16 miles away.
Yeah.
It was brazen enough to run for mayor. Wow. So when you said this is the Grand Wizard of the leader of the Ku Klux Klan, and he's running for mayor, it says, I don't even care whether if you know who I am, and what my history is and what I plan to do to you. That allows for a certain amount of fear because how many other people feel the same way?
Yeah.
So we hear about the police needing to be somehow restructured in some way to mitigate against the racial treatment of minorities. Was the military for you a place that was racist?
No. In fact, the military taught me that I had some racism. which is different because I'm black. Okay, we got segregation, and the world is against me. And then you go to another country, and now you're around Americans, and you have a American way about you. So you
Yeah.
use terminology and you say stuff to people, not realizing that you're being prejudiced against them. You know,
Because of your Americanness.
right?
Good gracious.
Wow.
You know, so you segregated or you treated people maybe not in the best light, just purely because they were from another country and they weren't American and they did not associate American. And that's why across the board, you go to almost any country, American people have a bad taste because you walk,
Condescend.
yeah, kind of condescending about everybody else.
Yeah. And so the old adage that it's different, it's not wrong, it's just different. And we tend to not understand that from a cultural standpoint, where we assign differenceness to equate to wrongness.
Yeah.
And when we look in the body of Christ, I mean, everything in creation is extremely diverse.
Diverse.
God, when he made creation, even the trees, the species, the animals within the species, they're all diverse. The planets are diverse. The stars are diverse. Everything is diverse. And so we don't naturally assign wrongness to nature when we see difference. But when it comes to the American culture versus other cultures, sometimes we assign some sense of superiority versus inferiority, and difference equals wrong. And you're saying that the military had to challenge you and say,
Right.
brother, that's not right.
Right. Because when you can walk into a situation saying, God bless America and no one else. I mean, how much wrong can you be?
You could be very wrong. Yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying the military was perfect by any means, but they at least had other measures to try to make things right. So if I was faced with an issue that strictly was an EEO issue in my eyes, and I had the documentation, although you have chain of command, and even if the whole chain of command is saying we lockstepping, we're all going to be against you. If the chain of command's that way, you still have the IG office. You still have the chaplains. You still have other avenues to go out and voice your complaint of what you think is going wrong. And usually those people could influence even that chain of command. Even if the chain of command is not influenced, they replace the chain of command.
Wow.
So the military, yes, it had a problem, but it usually always tried to correct itself, or there was some mechanism to help correct itself. Now, don't get me wrong, still had to work two times harder,
That's right. That's right.
you know, but it was there, and you knew that as long as you worked hard, the opportunity was there. Versus outside, you could work hard, have the degrees, have the certification, and the door still closed.
You know, people experience America because of our mindset, because of America's mindset. To this day, the political environment, again, reinforces the stereotypes of American superiority.
Yeah.
And sometimes American superiority gets mixed up with racial superiority.
Correct.
And people don't know what is the difference between the two. And for some people, there is no difference.
There is no difference in the minds of some people. That's right.
But the unfortunate thing is that the world has a certain expectation of America's moral influence in the world. We have been the place that sets the tone for freedom and democracy and all those things, that says this is the right way. And when America messes up like that, when America begins to double step the rest of the world, because we influence the world so much more than we know and think, that we have to realize that our moral voice as a country that says that we are Christian, that moral voice is seen by other world, people in the world as being really truly double standard. But in the military, you rose to the rank of colonel, but I don't think that was handed down though.
No.
I think that this calm, very composed Nolan in front of me got some fight inside of him to become a colonel in the military, you probably had to put up some fights.
Well, and yes, you have to. But no, no one pays attention to the wallflower. I mean, that's just the way it is. If you went to a dance and the person that hung on the wall, nobody saw him. It's the person that's out in the center, the person that has voice. And when you're in the military, the young ladies or men that are successful usually are the people that's talking. But you could only, I would say, I never had a conversation that I led with "I feel" or "I think," because the standards for me had to be so exacting. My conversation always started with Army Regulation 375 dash. Use of right regulations,
Yeah.
standard operating procedures, because then if
So
you want
it wasn't a black man talking now.
Right.
It was your own regulation
Right.
talking back to you.
right. So if you disagree with what I'm saying, you're not disagreeing with me, you're disagreeing with the regulation or the policy. And if you mad at the regulation and the policy. And I can remind you that you are mad at the regulation and policy while you're trying to make it my issue.
Yeah.
And that's how you're able to stay out of the phrase, because Americans as a whole like to compartmentalize things. We like to put things in little boxes.
Yeah.
Take this box out,
Handles,
open it up, black man, dark skin, thick lip, broad nose, got it. Hispanics. And you have to make sure that people can't put you in that box and leave you in
Amen.
the box. You have to continue to remind people that you have a brain, you have a voice, and that affirmative action is not the reason you got there. Of course, yes, I have 2 master's degrees. I published in a national magazine. I took all of the military courses that you could take. I got certified in everything I could certify in: critical care, trauma nursing. Had all the jobs and rose to the position of being the director of nursing for 10 years. But it was because I had the credentials, not because we need to put a black in there. And that's the one thing that across the board that irritates me, is that it's too quick for America, and I'm just going to leave it at that, America as a whole, to say, for you to earn a position, it was affirmative action or we gave it to you, as opposed to you earned it. On the converse side of that, when our counterparts get promoted, it was, I worked hard and I got it. So
Although it could very well have been the good old boy network.
Right.
Nobody says that.
they don't say it.
No.
But again, that's what I'm saying. But if you you have a high school diploma and you're a supervisor, and I have 2 master's degrees, and I'm teaching you the job, but that's okay because you worked hard. My work hard was not the same thing. And so that's where it's disappointing in America that
Sure
we
is,
want
man.
to go back and always try to go back and say, oh, y'all are angry because of the slavery and 400 years ago and I wasn't around and that. I'm not upset about that. I'm upset about today. When a young black person graduates from high school cum laude, summa cum laude, and the job that's available for them is to work in housekeeping or kitchen or something, and their counterpart graduate with a 2.1, just barely slid under the door, and they are managers at Publix and Walmarts and stuff from the start, economically having a leg up from the beginning. But it's always, but we worked hard, as though no one else worked hard. And so that's probably the upsetting part for me.
And that's what we call the denial of privilege.
Right.
That's where, I was watching a video on YouTube the other day, and a white gentleman was talking about privilege, and he was trying to speak from the standpoint, well, I didn't have privilege, I worked hard. And then he finally admitted in the video that he had started a painting company. He said probably the clientele that he was able to get jobs from was basically largely due to the fact that he was a white male in the 1970s versus some of the black people that were doing the same job, had the same company, but weren't getting the contracts because the people didn't trust them enough to hire them. And so I said, well, there's privilege. So to deny that you had some sort of privilege would just be a lie. And so there is that element of privilege that many people are speaking up and out against today to say we've got to do something to create equity in the system that will not allow privilege to be the reality and the norm anymore.
Exactly. And I never want anyone to give me anything. I don't want a handout. But I feel like if I work hard, I get the degrees, I get the experience, I do the things that America want me to do. At least let me get on the field and play.
Yeah.
Now, if I can't keep up with the standards and I can't keep up, then kick me off the field. But you got to at least let me get on the field.
Yeah. I agree.
And that's what that's the heart of America.
That
you
is.
know, that everyone has an opportunity in this country to have the American dream. And if we work hard and do the best we can, the system works for everyone. But there are things that actually give you the advantages and the disadvantages. And one of those things actually from the gate has to be family. Family. There was a family construct when you were growing up. And certainly when I'm growing up too, I'm sort of dating myself. He's almost like he's a kid on the block right now. But growing up, you know, anybody in the village could whoop me.
That's
Oh
right.
yeah. So when you grew up, there was a sense of, number one, in the macro sense, there was a sense of community. Okay, in a black community, there was a community, and people understood that, and everyone knew everyone in the community, and their ranks and their roles and all that stuff in the community, and that sense does not exist in America anymore. It's hard for there to be a monolithically a sense of there being a black community anymore. But one of the things that affect our ability to make the best gains in America is the breakdown of the nuclear family and the breakdown of the extended family. So you have predominantly single females raising. That nuclear family is broken.
That's right. That's the new norm.
But then the extended family, when you were growing up, that was the family that you fell into. You know what I'm saying? If the first level broke, that caught you. There was an uncle, there was an aunt, there was a grandma, there was somebody who actually was there.
Right.
For you, well, first of all, let me ask, did you grow up with with your father?
No.
Okay. And that would have been one stroke behind for most people in being able to accomplish. But how comes that was not sufficiently a detriment to deter you, a detriment that would cause you to get into the stereotypical conduct and behaviors that lead people into jails and all that stuff when there isn't a male in the house?
Well, and I say I had two strikes against me. I was not in the household with my mother or my father.
Oh, wow.
I was raised by my Uncle Jimmy. And
Extended family.
it's the extended family. And my Aunt Anime, and what she did, although she never verbally said it, but what she did is like about 5:30 when it was time for him to get off from work, it seemed like she got busy. There was an expectation that the meal was done, that the food was ready, the house was clean, and it seemed like, the closer it got to time for him to get up, the busier she got. So internally, I said, "Oh, I can't be sitting around. I need to be busy." Now, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a job or a chore, but I better get busy. So I found stuff to do. I went and started pushing the lawnmower or whatever, but I was going to be doing something because I needed to be busy also. But then the more I understood my uncle and how he did things and how he talked to other members of the family is when I learned that there were certain expectations of when you were growing up. And the last thing that I ever wanted to do was disrespect him or let him down in his expectations.
You had some reverence.
Yeah, exactly.
He had reverence. That's very important.
Yeah.
He had the fear of the Lord for that man. Go continue.
Yeah.
So, And I talked to the pastor about this while we were talking, is that I heard a conversation between my father and my uncle when I was 12 years old, where basically my father, being in the military, was supposed to be providing some financial support. But by the time the money got there, he was calling my uncle to borrow it back. And so my uncle finally just told him, keep it. We're good without it. And at that point, I said,
So you overheard that?
I overheard that conversation. And at that point, it made me grow up a little bit, because I was saying, my uncle has no responsibility to raise me, but he's willingly taking on that responsibility. And because he's willingly taking on that responsibility, I can't let him down. So when every one of my friends, nuclear friends, either ended up on drugs or went to jail from that time period.
Or maybe shot.
And that's a common theme that you hear from men that of your age range. My dad has the same story, where the majority of his friends ended up on drugs or in jail,
Right.
or dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was good about it, even though they were my friends, what I said to them is, I have more fear of Uncle Jimmy than I would ever have of you.
That was me. That was me.
So y'all need to understand, when you get ready to turn the club out, give me a warning so I can be home.
That's right. That's right. That's
And
why I didn't do drugs, and that's why I didn't join a gang, because I was
Right.
scared to death of my dad, man.
Right.
I was scared of him.
So
And that is good fear.
That's
good
good fear.
reverence. My father, growing up, I had incredible fear. All my brothers and sisters know that. My father, even bad people was afraid of him. Not because he was criminal in any kind of way,
Yeah.
but because if he said something was going to happen. And so we grew up with deep respect. I never looked at my father and addressed him in a disrespectful way. And so there was that growing up with Uncle Jimmy was that
he was the man.
stereotype of the male.
And it wasn't that he was a brutal person. He didn't curse. He didn't yell. I had 3 weapons, and I remember each one of them distinctly. 2 of them I deserved. The third one, not so much. But to show you how the community worked, and my first one was I learned that and I told this joke. Someone told it to me. I repeated it. Guess what? Cow manure is made. What is fertilizer made out of? I'm like, well, no, cow shit. So I retold that story about guess what fertilizer is made out of to my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, cow shit. Well, Miss Corrine, who lived
You
on
was
the
in
block,
trouble.
heard it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, but I didn't know she heard it. Now, 6 months later, 6 months later, they're on the porch together talking. I'm walking down the street, and she remembered. Oh, Jimmy, guess what Nolan said?
Wow.
And I get called over. Well, I've forgotten it. Nolan, what is fertilizer made out of? Fertilizer. What else is it made out of? And so then they reminded me what I had said. I go home.
And he whooped you.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
6 months later.
6 months later.
Wow.
So going into the community and saying you're going to do stuff in the community and hide behind nobody saying, that phone call or that conversation,
Oh, yeah.
meant there was going to be some repercussion down the road.
Yeah.
And he didn't really hit you. I am assuming, correct me if I'm wrong. He didn't really hit you because of your foul language. He hit you because you messed up his reputation with the state.
It was disrespect because I said it in front of
In
an
front of
adult.
another
At
adult.
least
That's right.
that's what he thought it was. I never saw her, but his interpretation is I said it in front of an adult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because again, had I not said it in front of an adult, nobody would ever know.
And my parents tell me about the times when they were growing up, and if you were cutting the food down the block or around the corner, an adult, if they saw you, they would spank you, send you home. By the time you got home, that
You get
phone call
another
was
one.
made to your house, and you got another one from your parents.
I
That
got
was just
many
how.
of those. I was a difficult child in many respects.
Well, I survived that because it had went away by the time I was growing up. So,
no, because I had some brothers who would snitch.
oh man,
Oh yeah. If you guys are looking at this, I have a twin brother.
Oh, man.
Lecky is his name. He is a snitch. Oh, Lecky. If you are watching this video, Lecky, you are a snitch. He'd just tell my daddy stuff and hit me
man.
up for money.
Wow. So he's
If
an
I stole some money,
extortionist.
he want half.
Yeah.
And I give him half and he still tells.
Wow.
That's my twin brother Lecky.
Wow.
Behind every story like yours, and I'm glad we are talking, behind every story like yours, there is faith.
Exactly.
Because what we don't realize is that God looks out for disadvantaged people. God looks out for the underdog. Jesus Christ's anointing is specifically targeted to the poor, to those who are fatherless, to those who are outcast, to those who are imprisoned, to those who are in bondage. That's who his anointing targets. And stories like ours, many of us, but in particularly yours, how you averted criminal activity, how you averted just the things you had to avert to to come into contact with people who valued you, people who looked out for you, people who just, I believe it's there was some faith somewhere. So tell us about that. Was there
Well,
what place did faith play? In every African American community, the heart of every community has been the church.
Yeah.
And right now, that has been replaced with a housing community that has one thing missing in every housing community. Every housing community that is the new norm for socialization for people of color in most cases is lacking one thing. You can't have a church on any of them. But in every black community, the church is the heart of the culture. How did that play?
well, and when we were riding around, I took you by my family church, and it's probably about, I'll say, a mile and a half from where I actually live. But Sunday morning, it was expected. I won't say expected; it was required.
Oh yeah.
You got up, you put on your clothes, you went to church. There was no option. There was I'm tired or anything. You just went to church, and it was really and that's why I say going to church was really great because that's where your friends were.
That's right.
You had people that had kind of like minds. You got a chance to see how people handle things or did things, and especially when you were being utilized in the church. And again, that's where I think it's very important that when we have young people in the church, you have to put them to work. You have to give them something to do other than shut up, be quiet, sit in the corner and wait till I tell you something. They have to be involved, and if they feel valued, that's what allows them to keep coming back. And but I know that when I got to an age that I was going to, I showed them the place. We used to call it Little Vietnam because people started getting shot on Thursday evening all the way through Sunday. And that's where we went to party, and people carried guns. If you wasn't getting shot, you were getting cut, you know. But even inside that, I think my faith allowed me to never be afraid of that, And so when I joined the Army, there was nothing in my mind that ever said that I would be injured or I would die. Now, as I look back at it, I just I had an internal faith that I was always going to be protected. And after I first got out of the military, my first year in the military, and I got out, I was working in the hospital, and there was a bunch of elderly ladies that worked in the hospital, and they kept saying, "Oh boy, God got His hand on you. God got His hand on you."
You couldn't see it,
And I couldn't see it,
but they could.
Yeah, but it kind of scares you too.
Yeah, it does.
Because wait a minute, what do they see
Yeah.
that I don't see, or what is it that they're looking at? So I guess it must be some persona or aura or something that when you actually have a healthy fear of God, and everybody else don't have to understand your relationship, but your relationship is just that, your relationship with God, and when you have a healthy fear, then He'll take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your experience? I mean, when did you get when did you get your spiritual, your salvation experience, or when did you get your conversion or your awakening experience?
Well, and it actually was twice. Once when I was 12, after I heard that conversation with my father, about my father and kind of my conviction at that point, and being inside the church and having some worth. I think that was my first time, and I joined church, and really took a hold of that. And
Before you go to the second time, I want to unpack that just a little. So what you were saying is that you had an expectation of a man that would be your father.
yeah,
That expectation was dramatically let down, and in the presence of another man who becomes your surrogate father.
yeah,
But your response was to a third man,
to a third.
God. It moved you to God.
Yep.
Fatherlessness moved him in the direction of seeking the ultimate father. Go ahead.
So that was, and then of course you get grown, and like most kids that go to college, you take that right turn and get away from it. So I got married, and when we had a child, my son, then I realized I needed to get my life back together, and so kind of made I would say, a halfway conversion. I'm not going to say a halfway conversion, because I was still probably into that me mode a little bit more than I should have. I was looking at my accomplishment, what I did in college, what my GPA was, my accomplishment in getting promoted, those kind of things. And then towards the latter part of my career, I realized that, again, God was making a way.
Amen.
So if there was one person that did not like me, that tried to do something to me, it seems to always have been someone else that would put there right at the right time
Come on
to
now.
intercede.
Won't he?
So you can't. So when you look at the overall experience and you say, wait a minute, well, I didn't put these two things in place. I did
Amen.
not put this person in place that disliked me. I also did not
Come
put
on
this
now.
person in place that likes me. But this person that liked me seems to always have more rank and authority than the person that disliked me.
Greater is he that is in.
So you have to pay homage
Come
at
on
that
now.
point, that things are, that no matter how much you feel about yourself, no matter your accomplishment, it's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
Boy, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
This is good. Zelvis, what in the African American experience, in which we see fatherhood as being one of our biggest demise, Nolan is showing that his life has always constelled around the concept of father.
Absolutely.
That when he had his son, he realized he couldn't be like his daddy was. That he turned his life around when he had his son. And I'm letting you know, so many boys out there are counting. They're just like so many Nolans are running around, colonels in the making, just looking for a figure, a father figure
That's right.
that they could just wrap their hands around,
Yeah.
whether in church, whether in extended family model. And that is the one thing that we do have to do better, is to begin to look out for one another, begin to care for one another. But what Nolan is saying is so powerful, and that is, no matter how you do that laterally, horizontally, at some point you need to come to grasp with the fact that somebody up there is looking out for you. Somebody out there is looking out for you, shaping your experiences, retooling you. And no matter what racism and all those things, there's somebody helping you out.
That's right. That's right.
We gotta turn our heart to that person. We know that there's going to be racism, and those things are going to a certain degree, continue in life, but it can't continue in the church. The church has to be the one place where we know is neutral. There's one place where when you go there, you can see what a real daddy is, what a real Christian is all about. It's all about. It's so good.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to speak to the fatherlessness issue.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I know you, but I don't know you, but now I know you. And as you were talking about your story, I'm just sitting here like, wow, man, no wonder why we connect so well.
Yeah.
I grew up in a home with a dad that brought me home from the hospital. And that's my dad. I bear his name. And if you know me, you know him. It's like Jesus said, if you have seen me, you have seen the Father. I and the Father are one. It's true of me and my dad. And at the age of 32, I discovered that he was not my biological father. I'm 42 now. So
32. That's 10 years ago.
10 years ago, I discovered he was not my biological father, and discovered that my biological father, for the lack of better terms, was quite a bit of a scoundrel in his youthful days, and finally got his life together and settled down and all that kind of stuff. And discovered that my biological father was the lead singer of a quartet, and then he was a pastor. And and so many things in my life made sense because I am my dad's child. I'm just like my dad, but yet I always felt different. And yet I held my father, my dad that raised me, in such high regard, just out of a healthy fear of the Lord and respect for him. And even though we butted heads a lot, I still respect and honored him. But man, when I found out that he was not my biological father, and I thought about the hell that I put that man through, and how much he continued to love me. I thank God for the Gary Applins. I thank God for the Uncle Jimmys, because they didn't have to.
Yeah.
But they did because of love. And I understand the love of the Heavenly Father because I had a great father that raised me. And I had an opportunity to bridge the gap with my biological father, and he passed away in December, on Christmas Day, this past December. So I'm thankful for that. But God was looking out for us, man. Like, he was looking out for us and gave us a good daddy.
Yeah, we had one kid in our church, and I'm blanking on his name right now, but he made a statement that was so profound. He said, "A father is the person that loves you in spite of yourself."
That's it, man.
You know,
That's it.
And so you have to have a healthy respect for the people that do step up.
That's right, man.
You know,
Oh, we've come to the end of another
Z session.
round table. And I'm telling you, this is so good. Surrogate brothers out there, males in the churches, find a young man. Uncles, find a young man. But let's not forget our young women.
That's right.
I know, Nolan, that many of the crises that we experienced were crises of fatherhood. And our women were always so strong that we never even realized that they had their crises too.
Yeah.
And so our daughters, need us just as badly these days. So I want to encourage all of us as we consider the racial disparity that's happening out there. We have some home stuff to take care of too, and that is, number one, our extended family model. When we, before, if long time ago, I mean, if you were from Bartow, you stayed in Bartow. But now, the people living in Florida are from everywhere in America.
Yeah.
But when we migrate like this, we don't take the extended family with us. And so you wound up not having the constelling relationship with family members. And then there comes a COVID again, and people are even more so, it does a damaging job on African Americans even more. And so I want to encourage people to find a way to connect.
Yeah.
Find a way. In this COVID environment, in my family, we do art. Every 2 weeks, wherever we are in the world, we do Zoom art together, and we just laugh, have a good time. I want to encourage you, find a way during this time. I know people think that COVID is just, it's gone, but I'm telling you, we are going to be having this for a while. Don't let it alter your life altogether. Find a way to connect to your children. Don't let the kids drift. Find a way to connect one with another. And we just want to thank you so much for listening to our roundtable. Our next session is going to be incredible, because in the next session, Zelvis, we are going to talk to Professor Emeritus, Dr. Johnson, and we're going to talk about the role of art in African American liberation. The role of art, incredible. Tune in next time. It is Z Roundtable, and we're out. Thank you.